Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here at the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga, bringing you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Let's begin with headlines. "27 farmers, including women, were reportedly killed in a brutal attack by gunmen in Bindu, Jebu, of Tahoe's community, Riyom local government area of Plateau State. And the Federal High Court in Lagos has discharged a former governor of Ekiti State, Fayose, on charges of alleged money laundering and theft amounting to 6.9 billion naira. And as APC sweep the council polls in Saturday's local government election, we'll take a look at the exercise and whether or not the electoral umpire in the state stepped on legal landmines in its conduct. Thanks again for joining us on the program. Perhaps the best place to start, for those of you who couldn't catch the moment yesterday of the funeral of the former head of state and president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, who was laid to rest at the age of 82 in Daura, Katsina State. We just want to show you and bring you this report by our correspondent Larry Lasisi, who captured those moments.
The motorcade bearing the remains of former President Muhammadu Buhari leaves the Katsina airport en route to Daura, his hometown in Katsina State. President Bola Tinubu leads the dignitaries attending the funeral in Daura. Some dignitaries, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former governors, and the chairman of the Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, had arrived earlier for the funeral rites. At the residence of the former Nigerian leader, relatives, including his daughter, could not hold back tears, while some residents of Daura offer prayers for the deceased. Accompanied by some military officers, the remains of the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces makes its way to the prayer ground for the funeral prayers. It was a combination of military and Islamic rites as the motorcade makes its way to the residence of the former president for the final interment ceremony. Draped in the national colors, senior military chiefs bear the remains of the former Nigerian leader to the graveside. Governor Diko Rada of Katsina State is inconsolable as he joins the son of the former president and the military leadership at the graveside. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, reads the citation of the former president. The burial is conducted according to Islamic rites, led by the Imam of the Central Mosque in Daura, Sheikh Salih Surabiu. The body is interned at 5:50 p.m. The interment is followed by a 21-gun salute, a symbol of honor from the nation's military. From Daura, Katsina State, Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
So that's how things played out yesterday in Daura in Katsina State. But let's also tell you, still staying in the north, at least 20 people were killed on Monday night's attack by gunmen in Binde village in Taos district or Riom local government area of Plateau State. According to eyewitnesses, the attackers stormed the village while residents were asleep, launching a coordinated house-to-house onslaught against women, children, and the elderly were among the victims, as many were unable to flee the violence in time. Survivors described the assailants as heavily armed. In a statement signed by the special advisor on media to one of the senators representing the areas, he condemned the killings and said the recurring attacks, including previous ones in Joel and Rib villages, points to a deliberate effort to terrorize and displace farming communities. Now, a federal high court in Lagos has discharged the former governor of Ekiti State, Adele Fayose, on charges of alleged money laundering and theft amounting to 6.9 billion naira. Justice Chukwuejuku Aneke discharged the former governor of Ekiti State after upholding its no-case submission filed challenging his trial by the EFCC. The court held that the EFCC had not been able to establish links to link Fayose to the crime. Neither was a prima facie made case against him to warrant further defense. On May the 20th, the court had reserved its decision after hearing arguments from counsel to Mr. Fayose, the first defendant, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Kano Agabi, and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olalekun Ojo, representing the second defendant, that's Spotless Investment Limited, and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Jacobs, who represented the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Mr. Fayose was initially arraigned in 2018 before Justice Moji Sola Olarotegun, but EFCC later secured a transfer of the case to Justice Aneke. According to the charge, Mr. Fayose allegedly took possession of 1.2 billion naira for his 2014 governorship campaign and received 5 million naira in cash from Mr. Abanikoro, bypassing financial institutions. All right, so this is a case now of the former governor of Ekiti State now being freed by the court, at least at this level. Whether the EFCC will appeal the case is a different kettle of fish. Let's also tell you about what played out in Lagos State in the wake of the local government elections, which saw the All Progressives Congress in the state chairmanship seats and won all the chairmanship seats and 375 councillorship seats except one. Opposition parties in the state have rejected the result. They are citing irregularities in the process leading up to that election. At a press conference in Agege, the chairman of a quote party in the state, Dele Oladiji, also forced the State Electoral Commission and calls for a review of the electoral process.
The process leading to election was actually boggled down and full of irregularities. But I won't like to repeat it back again. But in this very election, it's very funny for the first time that prior to the election, where political parties were to sign a peace accord, majority of the parties did not sign the peace accord letter. It was only just 2 parties that signed that day. We have to be lobbied to come and sign 2 days after. That aside, on the election day proper, for the very first time in the history of democratic history of Lagos State, we are having a situation that we are not even arguing or complaining or accusing the ruling party. We are here complaining and accusing the electoral umpire. That's the worst shame in any democratic process or practice. In the July 12 election, we did not actually contest against the ruling party or against ourselves. Opposition party actually contested against LASIEC. LASIEC stepped out of their mandatory or out of their mandates, out of their role as an election umpire, into acting as an election player. The LASIEC chairman has failed to acknowledge that, oh, there was a record of banner slashing in this polling booths. These are our action towards that. These are our investigation towards that. She overlooked all and declared results in such places. What are the results? They only declare winner. Winner without results. So we are calling on ourselves to present the results to political parties in Lagos and to the public. We want to see those results we declared so we can scrutinize it and so you can tell us how you arrive at that result.
Let's bring in our guest. Suleiman Arigbabu is the Executive Director at Human and Environmental Development Agency, that's HEDA, joining us virtually. Mr. Arigbabu, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
All right, Mr. Arigbabu, I think if I recollect rightly, I did see a presser before the election. I can't remember all you said, perhaps talking about the readiness of INEC in that sense, last year, I should say, for the election that took place last Saturday. There are layers to the controversy surrounding this election, from compliance to the rule of law or electoral acts compliance to the election itself, to issues around voter apathy. So perhaps a good place to start. What did you witness that did you feel LASIEC was really prepared, and now that the election has come and gone, what's your review of that exercise?
Thank you very much. I think the Bible says, for all I've seen and come short of the glory of God. What I witnessed on Saturday is that all of us have sinned against ourselves. LASIEC, the umpire, political parties, and all citizens who are supposed to, and even civil society. In a way, we've all fallen short of our responsibility. Of course, the bulk of the responsibility lies at the feet of LASIEC, because they have a mandate. They took oath to conduct a free and fair election. And that is far from what we can say happened. Yes, the election was peaceful. That must be underscored. But then people didn't come out to vote, and there is a reason to that, largely due to voter apathy, due to lack of preparedness of the political party. Because even the party that won, I'm sure in a way they should feel ashamed that they are winning on such numbers. I mean, if they had won on very big numbers, it would be appreciated. And then on the side of the umpire, of course, I knew it was going to be problematic when they said they were not going to use beavers, because what then is the essence of all the progress we have made in terms of electoral reforms? If you are going to be using INEC-denominated units and what, but you are not going to be using the technology that properly accredits voters. That's the first problem you have. And then the way elections are, when we were prior to the election, when we launched our leadership approval rating, focusing on state independent electoral commissions, we specifically mentioned LASIEC and urged them to rise above the shenanigans that we see in every state, where it is the ruling party that it's a winner-takes-all affair. And of course, we have seen it happen here again in Lagos. It's a winner-takes-all. And the winner-takes-all didn't happen just on Saturday. The preparation for that started way before Saturday. And many of the parties had been complaining about some of the conduct of LASIEC, that they felt discriminated against them or favored members of the ruling party. That is neither here nor there. But the reality is that the way election is structured at the local government level, we are not going to get things right. And if we don't get elections right, leadership recruitment process right at the local government level, it means we are not going to get good governance at local government level. And if we do not get good governance at the local government level, which is the closest to the people, people are going to continue to be dissatisfied with the polity. They are going to continue to feel that governance is being shortchanged to them. So the political actors and the rest of us as citizens, the way I saw citizens not coming out purportedly because they do not think that their vote will count anyway. It's just like you saying that I'm going to sleep and I'm not going to lock my door. I'm not even going to close it because I know if the thief comes anyway, they will still find a way around the door. So why, I mean, it doesn't make sense. You still close it at least. Let the thief come and make some effort. In the process, you wake up and at least you will know the thief. The thief, you know that you know him or her. At least that much could be a deterrence, or even it brings some sense of shame to the one that is stealing your vote, to the one that is undermining your electoral will. But to say you are not coming out to vote, you simply open the door for anything to happen. So citizens also have a large share of the blame. We cannot give up on the politics. We cannot give up on trying to make things better. So people gave the very wrong excuse of not coming out because in any case you are at home. You couldn't move out. Why don't you just then come out, exercise your franchise? If many more people had come out, the result in many places, even if it was going to be undermined, it would not be so easy. This was so easily done, you know, because really, technically, the parties that were declared on that day, to a good extent, actually won. But did the election start on that day? Did the process start on that day? Are things being done properly before that time? So that's why I started with that verse that we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, because everybody has to pick their part of this blame, and we all need to fix things.
All right, so let's do a bit of a dichotomy, or unpacking it in phases within the time we have. So we'll start with LASIAC, and then we can go to political parties, and then go to all of us who are citizens that you said all of us have seen and come short of the glory of this whole exercise, including civil society groups like yours in that sense. The LASIAC issue, for instance, I have been looking through every extant law there is as far as conduct a local government election. It looks like local government election, independent electoral commission, most of them are literally contravening the Electoral Act. Let me give you a basis. For instance, when EIE wrote to LASIAC and said, we're raising concerns about 150 days ahead of the election, or at least 30 days before the termination of the current incumbent is when you're supposed to conduct an election, but you're conducting it less than 30 days. This could cause a legal issue for you. Their response was, well, you are quoting out of context. Section 103.3 was talking about FCT, area councils. As a matter of fact, they cited, even one of their response, citing Balarabe Musa versus INEC in 2003, that INEC doesn't have, is it now, more like is it INEC now doesn't have powers over some of their activities. They don't run by the Electoral Act. So when I get the right quotation, I'll let you know. But basically, they are saying that there is a Supreme Court judgment backing their position. And I was shocked to see that, because in January, just here, an election was cancelled in Rivers State simply because they did not fulfill Section 150, subsection 1 and 3 of the Electoral Act that says that however elections are conducted into FCT area councils, if you as a state electoral commission conduct an election that is at variance with that, that election by Section 3 of 150 will be cancelled. What do you make of these legal line mines that we suspect that LASIAC has walked into? I could go on and on with the law.
It's true. Let me say practically all our state independent electoral commissions are laws unto themselves. And of course, they hide under the fact that state houses of assembly largely make their laws. But then, well, in spite of our federalism, what we have is a situation where the Constitution will make the minimum, will set a minimum rule, and then, of course, states can then, you know, raise the bar or what have you. But you cannot do anything in violation of a clear constitutional provision. But then we will never know who is right and who is wrong until this is tested. And I am expecting that political parties that are so affected in this should test at least this in court, such that we can have a clear position. And we at this stage, we also need to urge the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, to let's have a final say on this, so that we will not have something obtained in Rivers, another thing obtained in Lagos, and both are relying on some judgment of the Supreme Court. That's problematic. So yes, that is one of the several areas that LASEC has fallen short. LASEC has also fallen short by saying that they are not going to use, like I said earlier, they are not going to use beavers, they are going to use manual registration. If you went to many of the polling units on that, it was a lesser fair affair. Even in some places, voters were not marked. Their fingernails were not marked after the. It was just a lesser fair, situation. You just come in there, so grateful that you have come to vote. Thank you for coming. Just vote, go vote anyhow. There are so many. The atmosphere did not show that we were all prepared mentally for that election. I actually sympathize with the electoral officers, because many of them placed their head on their table and were dozing off because voters were not coming out. So yes, last year, and indeed other state independent electoral commissions do things that we see that could be at variance with the laws of the federation, but they always hide under the fact that local government elections and local government affairs are under the purview of state houses of assembly. But we need the Supreme Court to have a clear position on to what extent can they dodge provisions of the Electoral Act. I know that INEC do not have an oversight on them beyond providing them with voters' information, and possibly borrowing to them beavers if it's convenient and all of that. But outside of that, I do not know what other supervisory rule that INEC do have, and I stand to be corrected in that regard. But we need the Supreme Court to help give a final, and the Supreme Court will not just go out of its way to make pronouncement. We need to test this in court. So parties are agreed to test this in court.
Mr. Aribado, before we left, I wish we had more time. So I think the Supreme Court has made some pronouncement that I will cite. What will happen as to the ones in court is different. Paragraph 11, part 2 of the second schedule. The National Assembly shall make laws to the Federation with respect to registration of voters and procedure regulating elections to local government councils. Nothing in paragraph 11 hereof shall preclude the House of Assembly from doing same, that's me paraphrasing, but not inconsistent with any law made by the National Assembly. And let me read to you the exact judgment of Justice Yamaya of JSC in the APC versus RISIAC. In consequence of the failure to abide by the extant provisions of the Electoral Act regulating the conduct of the election to local government areas in the state on the 15th of October 2024, that's Rivers State, the said election is hereby declared invalid pursuant to the provisions of Section 153 of the Electoral Act 2022, which is the part that says whatever guides the election of FCT must have the same equal and binding force as those that guide the state. And in subsection 3, if the state doesn't follow through with that, this is a judgment of courts and is headed by the greatest sense of respect by a judge, but the court will decide all of this. But what do you make of all this situation, of all these legal landmines? And then let's piggyback on that to the inactivity of political parties themselves upping their game to drive people out loosely, let me use that word loosely, to inspire people to come and vote for their parties.
Unfortunately, the political parties could not get, even the one that had the most fanfare, that had all the resources and are in control of, they have incumbency opportunities, could still not get the voters out. And that speaks a lot, to the level of confidence that people have in the system. But I'm going to still urge Nigerians that in spite and despite, we can't abandon, we can't fold our hands, because eventually whatever these political actors do impacts my life and your life. So we cannot throw our hands in the air and let them just walk, ride roughshod over us. So we need to come out. If we come out, it becomes a little more difficult for them to read. It was a shame. I went to some booths, polling booths, and you have about 900 people. Of course, we know that the voters register also needs to be cleaned up. There are people who have passed on for years and their names are still on the voter register. There are people who have moved for years and their names remain. So a lot of cleaning up. But notwithstanding, if you go to a polling booth where you have about 900 people registered as voters, and you could count less than 30 people voting, that is more than abysmal. You know, and these are things we need to rise up to address.
So what do
Mr.
Aribado, as a wind down, what do you think? Because they say when it comes to respect, you don't command, you earn respect, you don't command it, you earn it. So if voter apathy, we understand perfectly that we need, no matter how bad the system is, we need to come and vote. When it looks like the electoral commissions in the states, this is not unique to Lagos State for the records, it's across board. Because simple things, for instance, January 22nd, INEC has announced election for area councils for February in Abuja, which is the standard. Simple things like that is not done at the state level. So when electoral commissions in states are sidestepping the law with the greatest sense of respect, allegedly, and then they always, we as citizens always see that when you go and vote, after all, the ruling party in that state will win. Why should they come besides appeal?
Thank you very much, Jeff. And this is why I said from the beginning, let me come to my constituency, the civil society. We dropped the ball with the state's independent electoral. The kind of pressure that we bring to bear on INEC that has yielded in the kind of reforms we have seen. We are not taking shame to the state independent electoral commissions. We need to engage them. We need to tackle them where it is necessary. Even we need to test cases in court. And we need to do a lot more voter education. But importantly, like you said, it's a natural thing that when people have this belief in a process, they rather not participate in it. So it is important that we ensure that there are consequences. So for instance, you have stated clearly that the last year timeline clearly violates the Electoral Act provision. So if that is the case, why would we and test this in court and probably just, if the process is going to be nullified, such that people will learn that things should be done appropriately, so that next time, at least, that would have become one of the things we have resolved. It will not rear its head again. So my take really is that we need a lot more voter education, but we need a lot more of engagement at the state level. We all are too focused on INEC, we are too focused on the national elections, but we realize that we have just allowed the state independent electoral commissions to do as they please. And that is why you have a winner takes all situation from every state.
All right.
You know, and this is quite unfortunate.
Mr. Agbado, I must thank you. You and I, when I say you and I, civil society, media, all of us have a lot of work to do. Because this is how the states were behaving. Putting caretaker committee, transition committee until federal government threatened them with their money and they put their acts together. Now the Electoral Act is saying 365 days before election, they are doing 90 days. So it's just a contraption of contradictions. Thank you. The Executive Director of HEDA, Sulaiman Arigbabu, thank you for coming on the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that's it on the program. Thanks for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Ozanga. Goodbye.